I want to ask you about the tariff debate in the time we have left, because, especially when you started, I always thought of you as a reporter who reports on economic issues, domestic debates. Before you were at The Intercept, before you and I even knew each other, you kind of attacked me once over some union issue. I forget what it was, but we had a little back and forth that was mostly pejorative, and it was about economic issues is something that you've really been focused on, is like the trail of money and politics and all of that. So I just want to tell you what I'm finding a little bit difficult to process about this whole tariff explosion over the last week, which is that, for as long as I can remember, the view of the left, like the mainstream left, and even parts of the liberal wing of the Democratic Party, was that free trade is evil. It's destructive. People on the left hated the Clintons principally because of NAFTA. And their support in general for free trade, then under Obama, it became the TPP, which Hillary Clinton supported as well. I mean, this was the ruination of the country, of the middle class, the working class, was free trade. And the elimination of protectionism and all of that. Ross Perot proved right that all these jobs went overseas. All the deindustrialized towns, you were talking about that recently when you were traveling in the Midwest and other places, and you saw how devastated these towns were. So this is, this is a serious problem that people on the left and even more close to the mainstream wing of the Democratic Party always understood, always maintained, always argued. Now, I get that Donald Trump's scheme of tariffs is not necessarily what anyone else would have planned. It was very haphazard, seemed a little arbitrary. You can make the argument that a kind of blunderbuss, heavy imposition of tariffs is necessary to really try and reverse this economic system. But I'm just wondering what you make of the fact that the argument that Trump was making, that Scott Bensett was making, that Peter Navarro was making was, look, we don't care if the stock market's angry. We have accommodated the stock market and rich people and Wall Street long enough. It's time to now enact policies for the working class, for the people whose towns, as you described them, have been devastated. And to do that, we have to reverse free trade and globalism and return to a kind of economic system where manufacturing in our country can thrive. What do you make of that whole debate?
I think it's just kind of a classic Trump dynamic where he's directionally right. He's calling attention to an issue that both parties have ignored or have really made worse over the last couple of decades. But in his actual application of and pursuit of the policy, he's not achieving the stated goals. Right? Let me give you an example. Tariffs are part of an industrial policy. In the last 2 years, Texas Instrument, one of the big chip makers in America, announced that they would spend the next 5 or 6 years building new manufacturing plants to reshore chip building. And in part, that was driven by the CHIPS Act, the Biden policy. And what happened? You had a number of Wall Street investors, including Paul Singer, a major hedge fund manager who gave big to Trump last year, is a big Trump ally, taking an activist stake, buying shares in Texas Instrument and demanding that they go back on that plan, that they continue building ships in other countries so that they can create more shareholder value, more profits. Creating industrial policy to bring factories back, to bring manufacturing back, to bring high quality jobs to the Midwest and Rust Belt and other kind of neglected parts of this country, really all corners of this country. That's a good goal, but that's not what's happening. Trump has really kind of completely ignored or handed gifts to Wall Street, given these blanket pardons to any kind of corporate criminal. If your goal is to do this only with tariffs, it's not going to work. And even if he's just pursuing with tariffs with no labor policy, no kind of fiscal policy, no kind of new arrangement with Wall Street, he needs allies. And if anything, he's alienated the world, threatening Canada, threatening Greenland, threatening the EU, threatening Latin America and Mexico, and then expecting them to work with the U.S. in this anti-China policy. And one day it's about bringing jobs home, and then the next day it's about raising revenue. And the goals keep changing. If the goal is bringing back manufacturing, I think that's a wonderful kind of top line effort, but it's not what's being pursued here with these kind of manic tariffs that have disrupted the stock market. And if he's just giving away these exemptions, which is a huge opportunity for political corruption. If SpaceX has already asked for exemptions. Many other companies that trade with China are asking for exemptions. I think that's going to be a very interesting area to watch. But if your goal is to bring back manufacturing, these tariffs have to be a kind of unified strategy where the U.S. works with allies and a methodical plan that's long term. That if you're going to build a new factory in the U.S., you have to have the certainty that these tariffs are going to be there for many years to come, and that there won't be exemptions. If you look at the behavior of the last 2 weeks, that there's no indicators that that's what's going to happen. So if anything, I'm concerned that the chaos out of these policy moves are only going to discredit efforts for a new industrial policy where high-tech manufacturing jobs are brought back to America.
Let me just ask you one question about that, because we're out of time, because we have an extremely important guest who's already waiting on the line. His name is Michael Tracy. He has an extremely busy calendar. I don't like to keep him waiting.
I've heard of him, yeah.
Yeah, have you heard of him? He's like a bundle of like positivity, and he hates to be contentious. So I'm really looking forward to spending some time with him. So I'm gonna have to let you go in a second. But before I do, I just want to ask you about what you just said, which is Trump's argument now, and for sure it has shifted and changed even in the last week, is, look, far from alienating the world, actually the opposite is true. Every country in the world is calling me, asking to do a deal. Like, hey, can we come to Washington? Can we do a deal with you? And his argument is that, and I haven't really heard an alternative for people who don't like Trump's plan as to how the manufacturing base could be revitalized. I'm not saying you have to present one to criticize Trump's, but his argument is that what we're going to get with these countries is not just the elimination of tariffs, but Trump wants to require they invest in the United States, they commit to opening up a certain number of factories in the United States, that they produce their products in the U.S. If that really is his goal, if that really is what's happening, if he can kind of facilitate that with major countries like, I don't know, Vietnam or countries in Europe, why would that not work?
Well, is that even the goal? I mean,
he says it's the goal now, I think.
We heard from Peter Navarro last Sunday and Monday that the goal was a higher trade surplus, that Vietnam needs to simply buy more American goods. Now it's moving factories to the U.S. I mean, those are different goals, right? And there were also goals from Howard Lutnick last weekend where he claimed that, from Scott Bessent last weekend, that he claimed that this was part of a strategy to save the U.S. Interest payments when they refinance the debt by driving down the rates for U.S. Treasuries. Well, is that still the goal? Because now U.S. Treasury notes are exploding in value. So the goals have changed, and they've been 4 or 5 different things this week. If this was a unified government plan and an implementation of that plan to bring jobs back and to bring high-paid manufacturing jobs to the U.S., I would have no problem with that. There would be no criticism. But it's just not clear if that's what the goal is. And the opportunities for corruption, where they sell off tariff exemptions without actually creating any new factories, seems very apparent.
All right, follow Lee on Substack. I mean, it's not just commentary analysis. What makes it distinct is just kind of old-fashioned shoelace reporting. Doesn't have a party, doesn't have a side, but really breaks a lot of important stories, especially about the flow of money. Lee, it's always great to see you on here. Happy to talk to you, and we will talk soon.
Likewise, great to see you, Glenn.
All right, I'll tell Michael Tracy you said hello. All right, bye. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.